All right, everybody. Welcome to Sports Politicen, Agree to Disagree, Episode 6. Thank you guys for joining us. It's 4 of us this time. We're going to go away from the typical traditional competition part of the show, do another roundtable. We're going to introduce ourselves right quick, then we're going to start off with Perfect Purpose. I'm Alan Hinton, living in Wilmington from Chesapeake, Virginia. Follow me on Twitter, @Flash79. Lance.
Leonard Lynch Jr. You can catch me on Instagram, Twitter, everything the same as @Lynch Jr. Purpose.
Perfect Purpose here. You can catch me on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, whatever you want to find me, I'm out there. Perfect Purpose.
And John Turner, Chesapeake, Virginia, from Newport News, Virginia. You can catch me on Twitter, Everybody Loves John. Facebook, Agree to Disagree, AJT.
Also, catch us on Twitter, Sports Politicen. On Facebook, it's Sports Politicen presents Agree to Disagree. We are pretty active in the Facebook. Twitter, we're doing all right with. We were live tweeting games, but the season's over, so we might get into baseball depending on how Purvis feels. We're going to start off with Purvis. He's going to talk a little bit about satellite camps, and we're going to go around a little bit.
Yeah, I wanted to just touch a little bit on the satellite camps issues. They're actually dying down now because fall ball is about to start, and colleges are about to actually get into actual football camps at their schools. But big recruiting tool for Jim Harbaugh this season was the satellite camps. A lot of people don't really understand what it is. Basically, the satellite camps is college coaches going to other colleges and doing football camps. The issue that some schools were having with it is that certain teams and certain conferences have stipulations on where their coaches can do camps. Say, for instance, the normal stipulation is that if I coach at a D1 school, I can host camps on my campus and no further than 30 miles radius, which means if there's kids who live 120 miles away, but they don't want to drive all the way to my school, I can't go to a college near them to coach a camp and see those kids. Well, what's actually happening now is that some colleges and some conferences don't have these stipulations, and the Big Ten is one of them. They don't have that stipulation. If a team wants to do a camp, they can do one on their campus, but they can guest coach at other campuses, and that's what Jim Harbaugh was doing. His whole tour was he was going to small schools in different recruiting areas of the United States, and he was coaching at the camps. And he was using this as a tool to see more high school students during the off season. And the issues that a lot of other schools are having with it is that they don't have that same ability to do all that traveling during the summer. That's basically what a satellite camp is. I just wanted to kind of get your guys' take on what you think about it going forward from here.
Who wants to start it off? Garner?
I think it's a good thing, man, because most guys in the South, they're not really seeing the northern teams as much. They don't see the Big Ten teams. They don't see the Pac-12 teams as much as we see in the SEC and the Big 12. That's what we're seeing 24/7 during football seasons. We're seeing the training camps. That's what we're seeing in the paper and our local news. We don't see those northern teams. So for them to come down and get a glimpse of how the northern teams are doing things, coaches interact with their players, I feel like it's a good thing. Now, I feel like the southern schools are upset, the Nick Sabans of the world are upset, but I feel like they're upset for no reason. You're already competing against these guys. Most guys in the South aren't going up north unless a team in the South doesn't want them. So you're not losing out on those top-tier guys anyway. Those guys are going to stay in the South because we really don't want to be in the North in the winter to cut and dry. It's too cold up there. It snows too much. It might be fun to visit, but not to live. So you got a couple guys who will go up there because of the coaches. You know, Urban Meyer and not Nick Saban and Jim Harbaugh. But besides that, most guys are going to stay in the South, so it's not really hurting them. It's getting exposure for the Big Ten schools, those northern schools, Northwesterns, the Ohio States, the Nebraskas. But all in all, you're really not going to have that much of a change. People know where they want to go before they go on the visits, so it's really not that big of a deal to me.
Turner.
I honestly feel I guess it just depends on the perspective you're looking at it from. If you're looking at it from the perspective of the kids who are going to be coached, that's obviously a good thing. You got a chance to have a prominent college coach come and coach. You get to learn. You show out. Then if you show out, they might think of you in the future when, you know, determining what school that you want to choose. From the perspective of the coach, you get to build your brand in areas that you may not have normally gone to. College football coaches, are brands essentially at this point. So everywhere you go is a representation of what you represent as a college. So from that perspective, I get it. I definitely think LRL certainly had a point as far as the Southern coaches, because they generally don't lose talent down there anyway for the reasons that he mentioned, the weather, they're familiar down there. So from that perspective, I get it. But overall, I'm generally in agreement with Satellite. Has always been big business, but it's even more big business now. Anytime you get a chance to spread your brand and prove your worth as a coach to get recruits, I'm all for it.
I think that I understand why, with the NCAA's in the landscape of the NCAA right now, as much as they talk about trying to promote fairness, whether that's, you know, something that's actually happening or not, and you can definitely debate whether or not the NCAA actually cares about fairness across the conferences. I can understand why certain people are against it, because there's no way that you know, the University of Central Florida will be able to host a satellite camp on Ohio State's campus. Like, they wouldn't let that happen. They probably couldn't afford it. So there's definitely there's legitimate concern there about the advantage that it does give those larger teams. But I personally will look at it from the opposite direction. Coming from Old Dominion and being, you know, ODU being one of the hosts of one of those satellite camps, I really like it. And the reason for that is, from the small schools perspective, it gets more people on your campus, which helps your recruiting. You know, they'll spend, you know, 2-3 days, whatever it is, looking around campus, you know, getting to know your coaching staff, getting to know the area, getting to see your facilities. So in the event that some of those guys that are at that camp aren't getting recruited by Michigan or, you know, Ohio State, whatever the case may be, hey, now they know your school and your coaching staff. Also, for some of those guys, you know, and this probably doesn't happen very often, but, you know, if you got a guy in that situation that is going to one of those schools and ends up wanting to transfer, now he's got a coach staff, he's got a relationship. He's got a program that he knows a little bit about. So you may at some point get yourself a 4 or 5 star transfer from hosting this satellite camp. So I don't mind it at all from the small school perspective. I actually kind of like it. I like the fact that in recruiting we can say, hey, we've got relationships with Jim Harbaugh all the way down here in Norfolk, Virginia. You should come check us out. It can't do anything but help recruiting if you're one of those spots. And I think that having that name recognition will go a long way as we try to progress, especially if we end up at some point trying to become, you know, a FCS school in a higher division, which is years from now, but that's neither here nor there. Any last thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to say I think that is the issue, is that for the players and even the small schools, it's great. And the only people that really have an issue with it are these bigger schools who, like Lynn said, they're not losing the best players, but what's happening is people like coaches like Jim Harbaugh are taking it to the extreme so that he's going to almost 60 camps in the summer. He's getting to see up close and personal a much larger like talent pool than anybody else in the nation. And he's using that to his advantage. And that's what he should do. But the only issue that other coaches are having is that why should he be allowed to do that when they can't? And not that they can't, but that they won't. Some of these other coaches, especially the Nick Sabans of the world, won't put in the time during the summer to do all that traveling, and they say, hey, we'll just recruit from this area that we have all this talent. Well, for Jim Harbaugh, this is what he needs to do to get Michigan up to par. And I agree with that 100%, that he should be allowed to do that. And I think that really the only issue is that there's these coaches and these different schools that have their explicit region that they recruit from. They don't want to give that up at all, and not even just a little bit. They don't want to lose one or two recruits. You got a situation right now where Art Browse got fired, and 6 people from Baylor have committed to Texas.
Yep.
Well, crap. If Texas wasn't right there, they wouldn't have got those. So that's how the landscape is right now. But I think what the satellite camps is doing is it's doing what everyone else in the world is doing. It's expanding. It's expanding the talent pool of high school students so that the nation can get the best players instead of just regions. And basically, it's going to screw the SEC in the long run.
And it basically goes back to how it used to be, you know, in the days when the Big Ten were running things 30 years ago, when the guys in the South were going up north to play, and then the SEC and the Big 12 ended up being able to get those guys to stay because, you know, they started allowing players of color to play at their schools. So they kept those players in-house. They weren't coming from Alabama to Ohio State. You didn't have that happen. They were staying in the South. So now the guys in the Big Ten had to figure out inventive ways or creative ways to get those guys to come up, because most players want to stay close to home. Like, that's the biggest draw these schools in the South have. Hey, your parents will be able to come, your family will be able to see you play every week. You know, we can fly your family in, we can bus your family in. They're right there. You can always go home. Whereas in the North, they really don't have a big draw. You know, you can try to use tradition, but most younger guys now, these 17, 18-year-olds, don't really care about tradition anymore. True. It's more of what can you do for me now? And I think Harbaugh, coming straight from the NFL and winning at the NFL level and still having those connections, he knows he has a limited time to be able to jump on that and get those recruits to come in. So he has to get his word out. He has to get his name out. He has to stay in the media. He has to stay on social media, because that's how kids these days get their news. They're getting it from Facebook. They're getting it from Snapchat and Twitter. They're not getting it from your Fox 13 or your nightly news recap, your recap. They're not seeing that. So he's trying different ways, and these older guys, the Sabans of the world, they don't want that anymore. They don't want to have to cater to these younger guys. They want to keep things how it's always been, and it's not like that anymore. So I think that's another issue they're having.
Yeah, I can see that. Moving on to the next topic is actually going to be mine. A minor league football league, or minor football league. All of the 4 major sports in the United States, baseball, basketball, and hockey, all have minor leagues with the exception of the NFL. The NFL had NFL Europe up until 2007, and since then have not had any other outlet to have a minor league. I think that though it will be difficult, it's important for the league to have one. One thing a lot of people haven't really linked is in the years since NFL Europe folded, more specifically recently, you've had a lot of teams struggling to develop their younger players, particularly at the quarterback position, where you've got a lot of teams that have drafted and redrafted quarterback, especially, Cleveland being one that seems to draft a quarterback every year. There's no comparable league. When you look around, basketball specifically and hockey also, there are leagues in other countries that play really similarly, where a guy can go over, if he doesn't make it into the professional league here, and go play. You can play pretty much the same brand of hockey in Russia or Canada or whatever the case may be. If you're playing Finland. If you're playing basketball, European basketball is FIBA rules, but you're still learning skills that really apply. For the NFL, if you're playing Arena League football, the rules are different. The spacing's different, the position's different. So you're not necessarily getting those same skills. You're not really getting film that'll help you translate to the NFL. There are some European leagues out there, and the talent is not very widespread. You've got some guys who can actually play. I think Vincent Purvis is pretty talented, from what I've heard.
He's all right. Yeah, all right.
What?
But, there are a lot of guys. I've got a friend who had a friend that played ball overseas that was just put in at quarterback because he was tall and had a stronger arm than him. He'd never played quarterback before in his life. And that kind of hurts, the credibility of those leagues overseas. There's nowhere for you to get NFL-like reps except for the NFL. So if you're not a guy who's getting those reps, if you're your team's third-string quarterback and you just need reps, you're just going to sit and watch. You don't get but so many chances to break down defenses and things like that as a third-string quarterback, leading the practice squad in the NFL. Right now, there are 2 leagues that are trying to gain ground in America for football. The Fall Experimental Football League has actually had 2 seasons. The first one was more successful than the second, but they're getting ready to start a third one here in October. And they currently have a deal with the NFL to use refs that are out of the NFL's refereeing academy. So they're bridging that gap for the referees with the hopes of doing the same thing for the players. And then there is the Professional Football League, or just call it Major League Football, that was supposed to start this year, ended up not having the financial backing, and just got evicted from their league office. So there's a chance that one may not start at all. They were talking about doing spring football, similar to what NFL Europe did. Most NFL Europe seasons were done by July, and this league was looking at doing that same thing, so that way guys that played well would be able to make training camps for NFL teams and make that roster if possible. I think that both of those are pretty good ideas, but it's really important, I think, for the NFL to kind of bridge that gap, especially for a league like the Major League Football that's having financial problems, to help get just enough money, even if they're not funding the league, being a major contributor to have those leagues be out there and create some kind of partnership down the road that'll lead to those leagues getting larger and having the ability for players to go back and forth. The finances be the biggest part because those rosters are so large, but I think that the benefits would outweigh the costs. Lynch, you want to, I guess, respond first?
Yeah, sure. I somewhat agree with that. We do need a developmental league for the NFL, like all the other major sports have, but simply because I think with all the changes of the last collective bargaining agreement, with the less practice time, the less physical time that these players actually get, it's actually hurting the players in the long run because they're not getting that time in, that they used to get to hit one another, learn how to tackle better, because in college you're not getting taught how to learn how to tackle as much as you need to be as far as the NFL is concerned. So back in the day, you used to be able to get that. You used to have guys like Arian Foster go undrafted and be able to showcase their talents and become a star in the league because they had all that practice time. You were going against the ones. If you were on the scout team, you were going against the ones. You don't have that now. So because of that, I feel like these developmental leagues that you're speaking of, the MFL, such as that, it needs to come to fruition because that helps the NFL in the long term. I would think the NFL would want to invest in such a system since since you aren't having those players have as much practice time, and it's more tape and studying and going through the playbook. And there's been several NFL players who've actually complained about that. I believe I think it was Jeff Saturday wrote a article for ESPN stating similar to what I just said, that with the collective bargaining agreement, it was more for the older players, the veterans who had time in. So these developmental leagues, that if they had these, they'd have an avenue for these guys who, like the RG3s, who are talented, but they need to get more reps in a pro-style type offense, or the Kirk Cousins who you can see the talent, however limited you may think it is, he has the talent, so he gets a chance to actually play. The Trent Richardsons, they can teach them how to read a hole that's wide open, you know. Maybe that would happen. But these guys we need another league to where these guys can hone their skills, because once you get to the NFL level, it's not about teaching. You have to know how to do it already once you get to that level. It's already, if they have to teach you, you're being left behind. So for me, that does make sense to have a developmental league, but I doubt that would sincerely happen, because I mean that's just more money out of the NFL pockets. I think they would see it as a competition. Well, these guys are leaving. They might try to be like the USFL and try to take over and take our best guys and take our #1 draft picks and give them more money, where it shouldn't be like that. It will help them in the long run, but you know how the NFL is. It's all about the money, and they want to keep it for themselves. And that's what it would come down to, money, as usual.
As usual. Who's next? Purvis.
I'm gonna be brief. I just found out my laptop is low on battery, but I don't know why. I thought I had a charge. I'm with you. I think the NFL needs a developmental league, but I'm also being realistic that they won't do it. These leagues that you're talking about, these aren't subsidiaries of the NFL. They're leagues putting themselves out there trying to find a niche using those players who aren't in the NFL. The problem with that is that it wouldn't be an NFL developmental league, which would mean the NFL would pull out its bankroll and smash these leagues down before it even tried to take any of their money. So what the NFL would have to do is it would have to back a league. What you have in the NBA, the MLB, NHL is you have minor league systems that are backed by the professional. What we have in the United States right now is we have, if you play semi-pro, there's at least 10 teams per state, 10 leagues per state, and then you have Arena League. There's 3 levels of Arena League, I think, and then you have Canadian Football League. You have too many leagues that aren't under one governed body. What you have to do is condense it so that you get a quality product that you can go back and forth from the NFL with. Right now, there's no product. There's no product for the NFL to pull players from. They have to create their own. And I think that the money must not be there, because that's why the NFL Europe didn't work out. But also, it was in Europe, so that got to be expensive. Another thing that NFL Europe had that I think a lot of people are missing with these other leagues, NFL Europe had NFL coaches. There's coaches who coach in NFL Europe who are in the NFL right now. They're on coaching staffs. They were sent over there to develop and learn how it's done in NFL. These leagues that are starting up in the fall and stuff like that, they're not using this quality of coaching, and they're not using NFL members. They're not using NFL owners to start these leagues, which is why they're not making it, because they don't have the right forces leading them to get to where they want to be a developmental league. I feel that it's a really good idea, but it has to be backed by the NFL. The NFL is the only organization that can make this work, and I think the money must not be there. I mean, I guess I can call up Roger Goodell and find out, but it must not be there. They would have done it by now, for sure. I mean, would you pay to go watch a non-NFL game? I don't know. How much would you pay? That's something you got to think about when you're trying to do a developmental league.
I want to take a bit of a different approach to it. I do think that it is a good idea in practice, but then we have to set some parameters, and then we have to determine how we're going to do it. Are we letting early entry draft prospects do it, who are potentially top picks, who know they need to work on things? Are we doing first, second, and third year players who can't get playing time on their own teams, but their teams would like to work with them on some things? Are we going to let people who are trying to get who are trying to get one last chance in the NFL, are we going to let them do it as well? I mean, I think that would kind of be the first thing. We need to get that together logistically. Then once we do that, are they going to be able to, is each team going to have one, like a minor league system like in baseball? I mean, I think, again, it's a very good idea in practice, because Lord knows some of these people who come to the NFL now clearly aren't ready for it. There's still a huge difference in physicality from college to NFL, but then with college, being a lot of spread offenses, there are more pro-style offenses now, but, not being as big, not being as strong, not being as fast, obviously because they're not physically mature. And then the different types of offenses and defenses we have in college and in the NFL, I really think that it's difficult. I really think that if you're going to do it, this has to be like a pipe feeder team for every NFL team. It would be, and I don't know if all of the owners of the team are going to be interested in footing the bill for that. Then, like y'all mentioned, is it going to be like another league? Are people going to actually go watch these games? Or is it just like training camp style where they just work on skills and things? It's just a lot more questions that need to be answered. But I do think that in practice and on paper, yes, I think that would be a very good idea to do that. Get more of these kids that want to play ready for the NFL.
A couple of responses to you and Purvis. I think that obviously the NFL would have to have some kind of participation. All the other major leagues have contracts in place that allow players to be sent down to those minor leagues. It's negotiated in a contract where they still get paid. So the NFL would have to do something along those same lines. Put it in your contract when you get drafted, when you get signed, whatever the case may be, where if the team wants to send you down, you go down. Obviously, the only way that makes sense is if the minor league is still playing with some form of the same playbook. So it would kind of be like the NBDL in that respect. I think one thing that would be really interesting going along those lines, if you do have that buy-in from the NFL, the teams having a positional coach or like a young coach be the head coach of the developmental team, and then as they've introduced now this internship program that has all these former players in it, why not have them be coordinators on these developmental teams? Have Deuce Staley be the running backs coach or the offensive coordinator, whatever the case may be, for his developmental team. Y'all know how I feel about Bleacher Report, but a few years ago, Bleacher Report did an article about just this topic, how to make it work, and they suggested doing 16 teams and having split per region. You have one NFC team split with an AFC team that was geographically convenient, if possible, to do the same minor league team. So, like Baltimore and the Redskins would do one, Dallas and Houston would do one, things along those lines. You could find teams from the other division that were close, put them in the same. Obviously, the thing about that is it kind of complicates what you do from a playbook perspective, because which team gets the playbook, but then you don't have to worry about one team finding 50-odd guys that they want to put in there, but also still keeps some of the quality there. And then going back to what Purvis was saying, both of the leagues that are right now happening have some kind of relationship with the NFL. And I don't think that they would be really in competition with the NFL. If they're going to do a minor league, you look at a lot of it being like the Experimental Football League, only doing games in October. the Major League Football being in the spring kind of gives you the opportunity, if you play in those leagues and impress, either to make training camps with the NFL teams for the spring league or for the fall league, which is only in October. Once you get towards the last half of the season, when you have a lot of injuries, those guys being able to step in. So you're not really competing too much with the NFL for money. And in the case of spring, you're really going out there in a market that's dry. There's not a lot of sports if you don't like baseball or tennis in the summer. So if you really get started in June or July, which is what I think they would do, you look around and you're not competing with nobody who watches football really watches tennis like that tough. Some people might watch both, but they're not going to be diehard fans. So if you get a chance to watch, even if it's lower level pro football, as opposed to having to watch Novak Djokovic lose to random guy X, you're going to turn that down. Fergus?
What I wanted to say to that, Alan, was just with the whole football teams having different people coaching for them and everything. A situation that's going on right now is in Europe. There's football teams who actually have that like relationship. Like having a relationship with the NFL doesn't necessarily translate to being backed by the NFL. Now these leagues, they know people in the NFL. They might even have ex-coaches and front office people who were in the NFL. But there's a difference between having a relationship and being backed in the NFL. One of the best teams, American football teams in Europe right now, is the Swarco Raiders. They're remnants of the NFL Europe. They actually have an ongoing relationship with the Oakland Raiders. Every 2 years, their coaching staff goes to Oakland, stays down there for 2 weeks to a month, and learns from that coaching staff. This has been going on since NFL Europe collapsed. Now that's a relationship, but is this team like a developmental team for the Oakland Raiders? No, and that's what you're fighting against. If a league comes out and says the NFL is backing us, believe me, everyone would know that the NFL is backing them, and that would change the game. That's something that you got to work on. I think right now, what the NFL is doing is telling these leagues that, hey, as long as you don't take any money from us, you can do what you want. You got our blessing. But there's a difference in letting you do what you want and saying that we're going to back you. And I think right now the NFL doesn't want to back anybody.
I agree. I don't think they really want to back anyone. You said something earlier about if the money was there, this would already be happening. I think they could find a way to get that money. I mean, they have so much money coming in from all different avenues that they're just spending. You know, instead of building multiple billion-dollar stadiums that the people got to pay for, to put that into a developmental league that allows people to watch more football, because a lot of people, under the guise of you can't get too much football, would I assume would watch, even if it is European league playing, because people want to watch football.
I watch European football all year long.
Exactly, and then parlay that into fantasy football, because people can't get enough of betting and gambling. You parlay those two into one another, you could have a league making its own money really soon. But I think and I think it just depends on the talent. That's what I think the issue is. Like Turner was saying earlier, who would you let in? Is it going to be these third stringers who are barely hanging on? Is it going to be these college seniors or sophomores or juniors who got kicked out of school for whatever reason and need somewhere to go, somewhere to make a quick buck? You know, I think there would be a lot of parameters that they had to put in place. I think if everyone got together, the heads got together and came up with something, I feel like they would come up with a good rule system and boundaries they can have in place in order for them to flourish, and as well get these, because there's a lot of coaches or former players who want to become coaches in the NFL. They can use this time in an NFL Europe or a developmental league to hone their skills, to teach NFL players. They can then, when they interview for the Browns job, say, hey, you know, this guy over here, I coached him up in Europe. He's over here. He's putting up numbers for this team here. You know, you can have that on your resume instead of just going, well, I played 10 years in the league as a backup, and I can do this and that. So I feel like it would help everyone overall. It would help owners and GMs find because everyone's always looking for that diamond in the rough that nobody knows about who comes out and shines. So I feel like they would have that opportunity if they had another developmental league.
One thing I worry about though is that for those who actually go to this, if it is more than the skills, where you learn your skills and own your skills, and you actually have games, like I worry about the extra wear and tear on the players going into the NFL. I mean, the NFL is already getting to the point now where they've cut back on the training camp, on the OTAs, trying to preserve these guys' bodies. And every additional hit that they take, and I hate to sound like this, takes a hit off their career. And it's obviously to improve their game, but that lessens the amount of time in the NFL. I'm sure that's a risk that they will be willing to take, but that's just a concern as well. I also just feel like y'all both y'all mentioned it, but I think when the NFL, if this gets too big, the NFL will shut it down.
Yeah.
If it's not anything that's directly with the Shield, as far as the 32 NFL teams, I don't think that Goodell and his cronies are going to continue to let that go anymore. They have no interest in, I'm not going to say they don't have any interest in expanding the game. They've had difficulty expanding the game. And in this regard, I feel like this would greatly expand the game. But once they feel like it could possibly branch off into their own league, I think they shut it down.
Coming off of that, I agree with that to a point. But I think they would be able to twist that around, and they would be able to find a way to spin it. Be like, hey, every hit these NFL players are taking, it takes a hit off of their career. But if we got them developing over here, they're not taking NFL caliber hits. They're taking these lower caliber. It's pretty essentially a college hit that they're taking, and it's not as bad. I feel like if they generated enough buzz and enough money, they would be able to make it work. But like you said, I just don't. I don't see them. As from the player's perspective, as a player, I wouldn't want to go over there because it takes a hit off my career. That's taking time off my back. Like your injuries. You're not gonna have that same medical staff that can help
and then
you
if they do
you're
get
overseas.
And then if they do get injured, are they still compensated like they are in the NFL? I mean, how are they going to do contracts? Are the contracts going to be guaranteed for a certain amount? Obviously, they're not going to get paid like NFL guys, but again, it's a lot logistically that has to be covered. And I'm not really sure Goodell is really much interested in doing that. And truthfully, he has enough problems of his own with this silly 18-game nonsense and CTE and concussions. I don't even know if this is on the table. I honestly don't think that this is even on the table.
Before we get too far into that, let's try to move on. In interest of time, we may be able to try to come back to this during the week and have a more in-depth discussion about that. But we're going to move on to basketball and then finish up in the NFL. AJT is going to talk a little bit about NBA's free agency.
So everybody has been paying attention to free agency lately. It's been talked about for a while. It was the first part of an unprecedented cap spike. The cap spiked at $94 million, and there have been a lot of questionable deals that have been given out. And I just wanted to talk about how the landscape of the NBA is changing. You have Timothy Mozgov, either on the first or second day, got a deal, 4 years, $64 million. This guy barely played last year. He was an integral part of Cleveland the year before that. He had knee surgery this past offseason, barely played, didn't really contribute much to Cleveland. He got 4 years, $64 million. Then you got Mike Conley, who's actually a good player, but he's vastly overpaid, 5 years, $153 million. And what interests me a lot about that is I feel like a lot of guys and players they smartly decided to be free agents during this time. But how does this work for business if the cap is going up, but then you have all of these guys that are overpaid? It makes doing business a bit more difficult. Example, just a few years ago, expiring contracts were the thing. If you had an expiring contract, you were trying to send it to another team to get cap space. Now, expiring contracts don't mean much at all because everybody has cap space now. Then you look at the players. The players are making all of this money, which is good. You have the jersey, you have the endorsements and things on the jersey sales. The NBA is doing well, but it almost feels like, and I'm all about players getting money as much as they can get, but I feel like that I do have, well, I don't want to say an issue, but I did just want to speak on the fact that there are players who aren't deserving of the salaries that they're getting, and they're actively handicapping their teams, and these GMs making panic moves to try to spend all of this money. For instance, Evan Turner got 4 years and $75 million to go to the Blazers. The Blazers had tried to get Chandler Parsons. He went 4 to 94 to Memphis, but then Portland made a panic move, and then they got Evan Turner. I feel like a lot of these GMs, and I don't want to disrespect them because they do have their jobs, but some of the moves that these GMs are making, I honestly feel like we could, if we had access to the information that they have, knowledge of the salary cap, I definitely feel like we could do a lot better than that. I just don't like how money is just given out willy-nilly to just below average players whose play hasn't warranted. I'm not going to say that players don't deserve to be paid, but their play hasn't warranted it.
That's interesting because Mike Conley overnight went from underrated to overpaid that quickly. People, I feel like he's been overlooked for so long, and then he got this huge historic contract, and now it's like, oh, he's overpaid, which I agree with. These a lot of players who are good but not great getting great money, and it's because of the increase of the salary cap and because of the cap that they have to spend. It's making that you have to spend that money that they're just giving it to anybody. Now, a lot of players, like you said, smartly did their contracts like this to where they would be free agents when this actually went up. So I like the fact that the players noticed that this was going to happen and parlayed that into their free agency coming in 2016 and 2017, knowing that the cap was gonna explode like it is, and you're gonna be able to get that money. But I feel like it's gonna dilute everything because you got guys making 12, 13 million who don't deserve 12, 13 million a year. They're not that type of guy. And then in the long run, it's going to be the same thing it's always been in every other sport, where the top guys are going to make exorbitant amount of money to level things off, and then what those lower tier, the middle tier and lower tier guys are going to get whatever trickles off. And these lower and middle tier guys right now are getting the money instead of these higher tier guys, which is going to piss the higher tier guys off. Like John Wall tweeted out long before how who was it that was making more money than him? I think it was Reggie Jackson. Reggie Jackson making more money than him. And he's right. It's wrong to say in retrospect, but he's right. Reggie Jackson isn't as good as John Wall, but he's making more money than John Wall. And it's ridiculous to think about, but it is what it is.
I'll point this out.
It's hard to try to... Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I'll point this out. You mentioned how the upper tier guys... LeBron and Chris Paul are the president and the NBA vice president of the Players Association, respectively. And a lot of the talk that's been said is that they're going to push for max salaries because the superstars in the NBA are far underpaid what their actual worth on the court is. And that's going to create a schism between the 1%, I guess you could say, and then everybody else in the union. So that's interesting to see how that's going to play out going forward, because I think at the negotiating table, you want to present a unified front, But then if it's the 1% against the 99%, and then them against the owners take advantage of that, get a bigger piece of the pie. So that's something interesting to look at going forward.
So my thoughts on the whole thing, well, I have a couple thoughts. One of my first thoughts was one of the things the guys talked about. I was watching the Summer League yesterday, and one thing that got brought up is one of the things that I think is really worth looking into. How do your best players on your team right now feel about guys that are realistically second, third, fourth even on the list as far as talent for their team being the highest paid players? It's going to be at least 3 more years before everybody's contracts are really reflected under this new TV deal. So it's going to be 3 or 4 years where you have some guys who are getting paid comparable or more than a team star player. You know, the question is, will those guys be able to stay humble, or are they going to start acting like their salary as opposed to their talent level? You could end up seeing some serious chemistry issues in the meantime while this kind of stuff is ironed out. But the reality is everybody's going to make more money very, very soon. They're talking about LeBron James opting out of his contract again and making $40 million starting next season. So, you know, within the next couple years, the money these guys getting paid right now is going to be nothing compared to what the superstars get paid. But we just have to find a way to keep guys humble up until that point. My other thought was we have to stop looking at these salaries based on the numbers. We have to really start looking at them on percentage of the cap. For, you know, a guy making $12 or $13 million right now, where it's not like making $12 or $13 million was in 2002. If a guy got paid $13 million in 2002, he was huge. You know, you knew he was a guy with talent. Now $13 million is only what, 8% of the salary cap, something like that. So that's not really a big hold. And that's doing math off the top of my head. It may not be 8%, but you know, looking at a guy making 8% of your salary cap versus just saying he's making $13 million, those sound a lot different. And that's really the way we have to start looking at it until the majority of the salaries on the NBA rosters are reflected since this TV deal. Once we get to a point where most of these guys are making that money, then it won't really look the same. But I still do agree that just having this money and having everyone have to meet the salary cap floor, which is higher than the salary cap was last year, and I think that's the reason so many of these salaries are so big, is you only had 4 teams last year, I think, that had salaries over $90 million. And the salary cap floor for this coming season is 85. So everyone but those 4 teams have to find ways to get their money to right there. And that's huge. And the only way you can really do that, unfortunately, is by giving stupid money to a whole bunch of players. And that's going to be the case, I think, for this year and next year as well. Once you get past that, you'll really start to see it even out. But for now, Tyler Johnson and Jeremy Lin are your 2 and 3 best paid players on the Nets. I don't know. Actually, they actually might be the second, third best players on the team. So that may work out. But the reality is, we're looking at these guys based off what really is outdated information. You know, so much of us are looking at it as, what was that salary when we were kids? You know, when I was a kid, you know, Michael Jordan was in the league. You know, Gary Payton, guys like that. So if you were making $13 million then, you were on that level. So no, Tyler Johnson's not worth, you know, the equivalent of what Gary Payton was worth 15 years ago. But that's not what matters. What matters now is the percentage of what they're doing to the salary cap. And until we really start to reach the salary floor, and I think Philly, again, is going to be the only team that doesn't reach it because they just seem to refuse, this is what it's going to look like. So it'll even out in a couple of years, but we just have to change our way of thinking.
Let me jump in here real quick. Y'all know I don't really care about basketball. I'm not even going to waste y'all time. I'm just going to put in my little 2 cents. Y'all know what it's about. It's about the money, man. Personally, I understand exactly what you're saying, Alan. The money is inflated. The salary cap went up, so these average to even bum-like players are getting paid more. I got no problem with it. Make your money. Love the NBA. That's where the money's at. Wish I was about 6 inches taller. I'd be out there too. But I think personally, the NBA needs to look at all that money that they're throwing around and realize that you're throwing it to these average to above average players, and that's great for them, good for the money at the time. But just going back to what I think our whole theme has been the last couple of weeks about the NBA, why not put that money into fixing your D League, getting some young talent and actually scouting players before they actually come to the NBA, so that you don't have to waste your money on players you don't think are worth it, or you don't have to overpay these players. I think the NBA needs to figure something out. There's a lot of money to be had. They need to figure out a way to use it more properly. I guess that's the right word to say. Utilize it better, because I feel like they're just wasting it right now. And the opportunity is there. The money is there. The money is there. You got to do something. Right now, all they're doing is just give money away. I don't know. I like money, but I don't like to just give it away. That's all I got to say about it. I ain't saying no more. Sorry.
I actually spoke briefly on that on Facebook on Monday, actually, about how instead of raising the NBA salary cap, they should have tossed a lot of that money, even if you do $1 million per team, to their D-League affiliates. Think about how much a difference in NBDL salaries $1 million makes. If you break that up over, 12, 15 guys, whatever the D-League rosters are, that's a pretty substantial pay raise for each of those guys. Staying on the NBA topic, Turner's going to lead us out talking about Kevin Durant.
So everybody knows that Kevin Durant is the most sought after realistic free agent who possibly could change teams, as most people think LeBron is staying in Cleveland. I honestly believe at this point, with Al Horford going to Boston, I think his best chance to win a ring would be in Boston. They will really be neck and neck with Cleveland at that point with them on the team. They would still have some issues to iron out on offense, because that was a mediocre offensive team, 19th in offensive efficiency last year, worst in the playoffs. I mean, that was regular season, and then it got worse in the playoffs. But I definitely think Al's versatility, you add Kevin Durant, who's obviously a superstar in the league, I definitely think that his best chance to win a ring would be in Boston. And I just wanted to know, what do y'all think about Durant and his chances to win if you factor in the teams that he hasn't canceled off at this point, which are Golden State, which are OKC, which are Boston, and which is Miami?
Let me jump in here. Shoot, we talk about basketball. Let me jump in here. I'm not going to agree with you, because we don't have to agree or disagree today, so I ain't going to agree with you. What I think
How is it? We're not even doing agree or disagree, and he got to disagree.
Right.
I'm saying it one more time, though. If KD want to win, he going to stay his butt where he at, because no one else has a better chance to win. Not saying that he has a chance to win there any higher than if he did go elsewhere. That's his best opportunity, is him and Westbrook in OKC. That's pretty much it. All this is for show. If he does go somewhere, it doesn't raise his chances of winning a championship. He was in the best situation there. Even if he goes to the Warriors, doesn't raise his chances any higher than if he goes back to OKC. If he goes to Cleveland, that doesn't raise his chances any higher than if he was in OKC. So what's the point? There is no point. He just wants to be doing the free agent thing that he didn't get to do.
Nah, man. Like, if you go to the team that just won a championship, how would he have the same chance as the team that finished third place?
I was doing the same thing.
I don't know if I. Yeah, go ahead, Alan. I
don't see how going to the team that just won it.
And still got this. Right, especially if you got the same top 7 or so players on the team, and he's about the third best player in the league. Go ahead, Lynch. I think you was.
Hold on.
The reason why I say I agree or I understand what he was saying is because OKC took Golden State to 7 games, so they could have easily been in the NBA Finals. The Golden State took the Cavs to 7 games, so that easily could have been Golden State. So they were all pretty much even. Although I think because the Cavs won, if you go to the Cavs and it's essentially the same team, which it wouldn't be because they had to take apart. They would have to take apart that team to get him on the roster.
Exactly.
So it wouldn't be the same. And if you went to Golden State, they'd have to take apart that team to get him on that roster.
True.
So
exactly. That's my point.
Every team he goes to, other than OKC, they would have to take apart their roster to get him. So if he stayed in OKC, he'd essentially have the same amount of chance as if he went to Golden State or if he went to Cleveland or if he went to San Antonio. And really, it's just a 4-team race for the championship. It's those 4 teams who people seriously can see as contenders. Even with Horford in Boston, if he went there, I still don't think they could get past Cleveland. It would just make it easier for Golden State or for San Antonio to win in the West. So I think his best bet is to stay in OKC at least for 1 more year.
I will say this. I think that he's going to stay in OKC. Realistically, with the changes that they made in the draft or during the draft, they're the most interesting Western Conference team right now. Golden State has questions. Harrison Barnes. Do they keep Bogut? Is Azili going to sign somewhere else? He hasn't signed anywhere that I know of. You got a lot of question marks in Golden State. San Antonio is what they're going to be, just a year older. OKC is the most interesting team in that they had the success, have only lost 1 guy, and I think they upgraded on the bench with Arvydas Sabonis' son and Vinny Oladipo. So their team makes you the most intriguing. But if he was going to leave and go to a contender, I think Boston would be the most interesting. They would have to do the least amount of shuffling to try to get talent around him. They've already got Al Horford. They've got, as much as I hate to say it, Avery Bradley and Amir Johnson they could make trades with. I don't know if anybody in the world wants Marcus Smart, but they've got young guys and draft picks that they can put to complete that starting lineup, even though with Isaiah Thomas at point guard. Yeah, I was way off. With Isaiah Thomas
mixed up.
I don't even know. With Isaiah Thomas at point guard, seeing if Jay Crowder could play 2, Durant at the 3, and Al Horford at the 5, all you really need to do is find the 4. They've got enough pieces where they could do that, or even keep Sellinger maybe. They have enough of a lineup and pieces where they could put a team around him pretty quickly. I still don't think that team would be any better than what he's got in Oklahoma City right now. I think a lot of people are forgetting that Ilyasova was involved in that trade and will probably start at power forward for OKC, and he fits better the role that Serge was trying to fit last year. His ability is really similar. I don't think that he's the rebounder that Ibaka was, but Serge wasn't that great of a rebounder either. The drop-off wasn't that bad. I don't think Golden State makes sense. I don't think San Antonio makes sense, even though he didn't really even sit down with them. The Clippers was really intriguing to me, but they had no way to afford him. And the same thing with Miami. I like that fit, but with the money they just gave Whiteside and the money they're going to have to pay to keep Dwayne Wade, there's no way to get him there either. Boston makes the most sense. They have the most flexibility in order to make moves to get players around them. But to me, OKC gives you the best chance to win. The biggest question at this point, once you get him in, they haven't actually spent any money in free agency. So if they keep enough of their guys around, they could toss the mid-level exception to one guy or whatever the case may be, get a little bit stronger on the bench, and then make another run. So I really could see him staying in Oklahoma next year and possibly being in the finals. Also, I think that if he does, a lot of people have talked about him signing a one-year deal, opting out, doing the same thing LeBron James does, and then going for that $40 million contract next season, which I wouldn't have a problem with. That's it for our show today. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. As always, if you have questions, you can hit them to us on Twitter, send them to us on Facebook. We'll get to them next time. Anybody want to say anything about it?
Yeah, hit us on Twitter at sportspoliticen. You know, always hit us up anytime. We're always there. We're tweeting whenever we can, whenever there's something going on. So hit us up whenever. And tune in every week. We're here.
And happy Independence Day to all of America. Thank you guys for watching.